So, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to the Wiser and Osmine National Webinar Series, Why Choose a Career in Mining, Energy and METS. My name's Claire Chakrabarti, and I manage the Women in METS program here at Osmine. So it's wonderful to have you all with us again. And for anybody who's joining us for the first time, welcome. Thank you for coming along. Now, today's session is going to be recorded. So if you don't want to have your face on camera, then you can leave your camera off. Of course, if you don't mind, it's always lovely for us to have some faces to actually look at when we're chatting. It makes it much more easier to see the audience that we're talking to. So if you don't mind having your camera on, please do leave it on. So before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the various lands on which you're all joining us from today. For me, here in Brisbane, I acknowledge the Yagara and Turrbal people, and I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. And I'd like to extend that respect to any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander peoples who are joining us on the call here today. So this is the second session in our three-part webinar series. Last week, we explored what's possible in careers in mining, energy and METS, and we had a look at the incredible range of roles shaping the sectors. Today, we're going to go a little bit deeper and look at something that many students and new professionals ask about, and that is, what does it mean to build a meaningful and really values-driven career in mining, energy and METS? And how do you stay centered to your purpose as your career really evolves? So joining us on the call today, we have an exceptional panel of three women whose work really illustrates just how broad and impactful careers in this sector can be. So to start us off, I'd like to ask each of our panelists if you can just introduce yourselves, tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and something that you're really proud of. I'll start going across my screen. So maybe Steph, if you could start for us, please.
Sure, thanks, Claire. So my name's Steph Barham. I'm the General Manager for Decarb at Loop Decarb Services. So my background is not, I'm not a technical person. It's in climate policy. I've always been in the energy and climate space in mining. Something I'm really proud of is that we have, at Loop, we've piloted our first drilling project to help decarbonise the open cut coal sector with really great results, and we're about to go into our next project. So I'm really proud of kicking that off in that business, and I'm looking forward to racking up the emissions reductions as we help this sector.
That sounds really exciting. I can't wait to hear a little bit more about that later. Maybe Helen, if you could go next.
Sure, thanks, Claire. So my name's Helen Dejling. I am the Technical Director for Geoscience and Sustainability at Mining 3. I've been in this role since June this year, so relatively new. I'm a geologist by background, and I've wound all over the place and meandered all over the place, but I've started in academia, then went into minerals exploration, so gold, base metals, precious metals, and critical minerals, and then ended up in a government role as the Director of Geoscience for the Geological Survey of Queensland before coming back to industry a couple of years ago. One thing that I'm really, really proud of is that while I was in government with a big focus on critical minerals, as most governments do, these days, we were answering some questions around for the higher ups around where Queensland's cobalt was largely located, and somebody in my team made a smart-ass remark that most of the cobalt in Queensland is sitting in the Mount Isa tailings dam as part of their tailings. And so that led me to ask questions around, well, can we quantify that? Can we, do we have data on that to back that up? And so we actually started this program in collaboration with the Sustainable Minerals Institute at UQ, started a program of sampling mine waste across the state, which has now, in the last few years, been picked up more broadly across Australia and even the world. And so we now have, hosted by Geoscience Australia, there's the Atlas of Remining Potential that they have, and a lot of other programs and a lot of focus now on how we can repurpose mine waste. So that's something that feel has had a lot of impact in my career, and that I'm really proud to have been part of.
That sounds really phenomenal. And just from asking that question, it opened up all of that. That's really great to hear. And Naomi, what about yourself? Can you tell us a little bit about you and something that you're proud of in your career?
Sure. So my name is Naomi Boxall. I have to apologise in advance for my very croaky voice. I'm just coming off the back of an illness from my twin daughters. And that sounds very husky, but maybe it's not such a bad thing. I don't know. So I'm a senior research scientist at CSIRO. Have worked across a various spectrum of scientific domains, but I'm actually a microbiologist. So it's really about applying nature-based science to challenges that are a little bit adjacent maybe to some of the bigger issues in mining and energy. Particularly around resource recovery from mine wastes and urban strategic wastes that do contain, a gold mine essentially. So thinking electronic wastes and batteries and things like that. And more recently have spent quite a lot of time at the science to policy interface, trying to educate our decision makers with evidence and data to support Australia's transition towards circular economy. Noting that circular economy is very aspirational, particularly for a big country like Australia, where we have lots of different regions that do lots of different things, and there's lots of different challenges associated with those. And now I'm in a good place to bring some of that really aspirational thinking back to our biomining and waste and resource recovery research that we're doing here in Perth. A couple of things I'm proud of. Yes, the science to policy interface is something that I'm super interested in, actually, and we've had a quite a bit of success around providing data and information to policymakers, particularly around offshore oil and gas decommissioning and what reuse of infrastructure could look like, and the potential impacts for removal of infrastructure from sensitive ecosystems could look like, and the data and information that they need to make those multi-criteria decision-making processes actually work. And more recently, having some of our science and research going into feed the National Circular Economy Framework as well. So, yes, I can be in the lab and do very small microbiology-based science, but then being able to apply the bigger picture lens, I think, is something that's more interesting, and I think more valuable for me as an individual as well. So, I'm really happy to have those opportunities here at CSIRO. And one thing that's not career-oriented that I am quite proud of is that I ran a marathon this year, and that's not a small thing. And so I keep telling everybody, I'm a marathon runner now.
That is a fabulous thing. And how did you do in the marathon? You
Oh, not well, no.
Would you do it again, I suppose?
Yes, I will. Yeah, I will do
You
it
would.
again.
That's good. I
If
don't
you
know if you
finished,
convinced
that's
me.
doing well.
That's true. I finished.
There you go.
Oh, that's really great. And it's good to hear, how you can see what you're doing really being applied and the impact that that's having as well. So all of you have really taken quite different pathways into the sector. And I just wondered, today's session is all about building that career with values and with purpose. What does that mean to each of you? And has that changed over your career? So maybe Helen, for you first, what does it mean for you?
Oh, what does purpose mean for me? At this stage in my career, I guess, apart from the days where I suffer from imposter syndrome, which I think we all unfortunately do, but putting those days aside, when I have confidence in myself and believe in myself, then I feel like at this point I don't have to prove myself anymore. So I only want to work in jobs or work in roles where I'm working towards something I care about. So for me, that's bringing together the environmentalist and geology, mining sides. I love geology. It's a really cool science. I don't do a lot of geology anymore. Um, I also love what the mining industry has given me, the experiences that I've had. So I want to advocate for the mining industry, but I also care very, very much about the environment and about helping the mining industry be uplifted to be its very best self. So at this point, I want to take on projects and take on roles that help advance those goals, I suppose. And I can go into more detail of what those projects are, but I think we can hear from somebody else as well.
No, that sounds really great. What about you, Steph? What does it mean to you?
I think like I've always been really values driven. And I first got into like I did like a weird roundabout way of ending up in mining. Even though I'm a third generation miner, I never actually set out of school and said I'm going to do that. I was really into social justice at school and then went to study developmental politics at uni. And then that kind of led me into energy because that was the biggest catalyst for development is access to a reliable and secure source of energy. And then so I did my master's in systems thinking, but with a sustainability lens. And it's how do you solve problems of sustainability without creating other problems? I think like the mining part, I think because I've always grown up with mining, I knew like it was big, like it's bloody big and we need it. Like everything that we have today is because of mining. If you can't dig it out of the ground to eat, like if you can't grow it, then it comes out of the ground in another way. And I think there's a huge disconnect there in the fact that we need mining. And the more that we transition to a sustainable future, the more mines we actually need, because we're now then moving across, lithium, rare earths, critical minerals, copper, steel. We don't have another way of making steel that's commercially available except for using coking coal. So then the biggest opportunity for impact is by going into the big things, like it's one of those things where if you want a purpose and a values-led career, go the place where you can make the most change. And you don't make change by throwing rocks from the outside. Like everything is a system in the way that it works. And you actually have to work within that. So it's kind of one of the things that I like going through life and all that kind of thing. And if you think about, the things that are rooted in reality and our economy and our industries and that sort of thing, you can't actually drastically change it. You've got to be able to change it incrementally. So, I mean, that's probably the biggest kind of purpose. Everything I do, though, is somehow, leading towards that bigger goal of decarb. But I mean, you have crappy days where you're like, oh, all I did today was like timesheets and invoices and admin. And like, was that a purposeful day? It's like, no. But I think like, when looking at where you can take your career, it's about, you think more longer term than your day to day or week to week. And I'm sure that the other ladies here have had crappy days or crappy years. But it's all about, doing the hard work to be able to get to a position like Helen's in where, everything that she does is values driven now. It is a good spot to be.
Yeah, definitely. And having that slightly longer term probably helps ground you again when you do have those days where you're just like, oh my gosh. Yeah. What about you, Naomi?
Yeah, look, I love science and I love the continual learning aspect of research. And I think I'm at the point of my career now where I'm probably, I wish I was Helen, but I am having to continually prove myself in these very uncertain times and times that are changing very quickly. And I find myself lucky that I'm at an organization like CSIRO that provides you with the ability to work across lots of different science domains and meet lots of different people. And so that sort of need to keep learning is met on a daily basis, essentially, because you're learning how to do new things all the time. You don't have to be an expert in any of those things, but at least you know the people who can deliver that part of the project for you. And yeah, like science has to be purposeful at the moment. We've got some unprecedented challenges in terms of funding availability and priorities within our country. And so unless your science now currently has a purpose or is impact driven, you will unlikely be a scientist in the future, because that's just the way that the research ecosystem is operating globally. So yes, I could be a scientist that tinkers away in the lab, and I do have those very unproductive days. For example, yesterday I spent pretty much the whole day trying to get a pH probe to calibrate, which doesn't seem like the most useful use of my time. But you counterbalance those days with, the big days where you get to go and put, your science into those policy aspects, or you get to generate data that is the evidence that you need to prove a hypothesis, or, you get to go have conversations with exciting people like Helen and Steph, for example, where you can see their passion and understand what their problems are, and then design your science to sort of answer the problems that they've got. And I do quite like hanging out in the very complex discussions as well. So it's never typical microbiology research in my realm at all. There's always the social and economic aspects that underpin what we're doing technically in the lab. And yeah, having people around you that can, partner with you and collaborate with you well, I think is, critical, I guess, in my space. I also am like mid-manager level now as well. So like, there's like this added complexity around wanting to be purpose-driven in my individual science, but then also raise up and grow the next generation or the next crop of scientists and understand what they need to be able to get their messages and their purpose-driven values out, and which has been a bit of an interesting learning journey for me as well. So only new in that one, but I'm keen for advice and guidance as it goes on. But yeah.
That's a really good perspective as well, that like your purpose, you had your purpose for you at the beginning, and now you've got a team as well, and you're also driving forward for them. So as your career progresses, there's different aspects, I suppose, to that purpose. And a lot of the people who are going to be watching this or joining us today are going to be in those very early stages of their career. So can you think of something maybe early on in your career? Maybe it was, I don't know, an internship, a project, or just somebody you met, a mentor or a network that really helped shape your career. Can you think of anything like that, Naomi?
Yeah, like I fell into what I'm doing today accidentally. I think accidentally seems to be the way to go, right? So don't try and control the path, because the path will control you first and foremost. And I'm pretty sure whatever you study at university will not end up being your career at all. You'll have elements of that within what you do, but at the end of the day, you will learn so many new things and apply them to different projects and different industries as you go along. But my example is I was wandering around the university campus one day as a microbiology major with biochemistry as a second major. So very human biology type focused work, knowing that I really didn't want to go into medical microbiology. I didn't want to be a path person. I didn't want to be, medical scientist or anything like that. And I just happened to fall across this random advertisement on a notice board for a microbiologist looking at biomining, so the application of bacteria to recover metals from low-grade ores or strategic urban wastes and things like that. And so theory holds in terms of microbiology, but the application is completely different and far dirtier, I will say, but much more interesting to me because you have such complexity in the reactions that are occurring. And also mimicking what happens in nature as well. So those sorts of aspects were far more interesting to me, but completely by accident. And that one accidental find sort of shaped the whole start of my career through honours, PhD, postdoc, and now my research career moving forward. So I've been pretty fortunate with the people that I've been working around as well. But yeah, completely different to what I thought I was going to be when I was at school, for example. Like I thought I was going to be a doctor and an architect, but I am a doctor, but not the medical kind. So don't have a heart attack and ask me to help.
You're a proper doctor. What about you, Steph? Was there a moment in your career or a pivotal time that really changed and helped put you on the path to where you are now?
Oh, I mean, it's like what Naomi said, like things happen by accident. And I think if you think about the types of things you like doing, and things you don't like doing, and the values you have, and the types of things you want to learn, that means when these accidental, forks in the road come along, you can make an informed decision. But if you said, like, I'm going to do this role and then this role and this role, and I did that, like when I started out with Rio Tinto and I was like, I'm going to do this and then this and then this and this, and then I got made redundant. And because they sold off all of their coal business, and I was in corporate energy, and it's like, well, there goes that plan. Like it sets you up for failure if you do that kind of thing. I think the main thing is, like, I've been super curious about everything, and so when you start asking lots of questions and not like in an obnoxious way of asking questions, but proper curiosity, people, they kind of like, and I had this one guy who he was like, you like puzzles and you like solving problems, because I used to do the Sudoku every day at the in the kitchen. And he was like, give me a cost saving tomorrow. And I was like, who are you? Like, what are you doing? And there was this huge cost saving project through the business. And he was like, I want something totally out of the box. Just keep thinking and keep expanding. And it was really interesting. We did it for like maybe 6 months or something, where it was like every week I had to give him a cost saving idea. Some of them went through and became projects. Some of them were just like crazy but it was just the fact that I was a curious person and I was asking questions, and then people take notice and they say, oh, cool, like let's expand on that. And that really gave me, I guess, an opportunity to be okay with being curious. Particularly, a lot of mining organizations can be quite hierarchical. I don't like that. I don't understand it. I don't think it doesn't gel well with me. And so being able to kind of jump around and think a bit differently, I think is really and have it validated has been really helpful for me. I don't think I'd be like, I don't know, if you spoke to somebody a few years ago, and even there's documentation I'm going through. I do peer review for approvals for greenhouse gas abatement plans for the different New South Wales and Queensland environmental approvals. And looking back at the Climate Change Authority's sector pathway from 2024, and I'm like, no, that's outdated now, because we keep moving forward. Everything keeps moving forward, and everything is, people are saying, well, I need a better answer than that. So how can we find a pathway? And I think it's those type of things which are really, they've definitely been pivotal for me.
And just expanding on that, Steph, if I could just ask you, so I know when I first started my career, I didn't have the confidence. I had lots of questions. I didn't have the confidence to ask them. How did you, when you first started out, how did you get the confidence to just ask the questions and go, what advice would you give?
Well, I think, like, I'm neurodivergent, so I don't pick up on the social cues. And so that's probably when people are like, don't ask that, Steph. I'm just like, yeah, no, they asked. So I'm going to answer it. Whereas I think, like, standard thinking would be like, oh no, that person who is far senior, they're not actually, they may not be asking a question for an actual answer. Maybe I should have given them a polite answer. I don't know.
No, not at all. It sounds like it's been the perfect thing, and
Yeah.
actually, it's probably a superpower. I wish I had been able to do that, I think.
Well, I think, like, I mean, one of the things is that, like, logic always stands, right? And so, like, if you just keep following your logic, and I read somewhere that I think it was probably Instagram, that if when you get anxiety or imposter syndrome, you like give it a name, and like, I think someone was like called it Ryan, and was like, shut up, Ryan. Like, it becomes like a better way of being able to handle those type of self-doubt. So if you've got that logic and it says, no, I know, and then the little imposter comes up, then just give it a name and tell it to bugger off. I don't know that maybe Helen or Naomi could answer that better than me.
No, that's exactly what my psychologist tells me to do, so that's fine.
Oh, you just need to read Instagram, like.
Got $250
I
for
found a
it,
very
so-
good article that referred to that as, it wasn't called Ryan, they referred to it as the itty bitty shitty committee that's in your head that
Oh,
tells
yeah.
you all the things that you don't want to know and you shouldn't listen to. So I apologize to anybody if that my language offended you there, but that was what it's actually called. I've seen there was a very good article.
Yeah, well, if that language offends, then maybe rethink mining.
Yes.
What about yourself, Helen? Was there a point in your career, like early on, that really put you on the path to where you are now?
Well, I think the key word that Steph and Naomi have both used is accidental. So young people and students that are starting out and want to have the whole thing planned out, just let that go. Might be hard. Maybe you want to have the whole thing mapped out for a sense of security or something, but like Steph said, you could get made redundant. Does happen. Sometimes it's a good thing, Sometimes you get a nice redundancy payout, but just all of my career decisions have been for very personal reasons, not, and I am universes away from where I thought I was going to be. So when I finished uni, I went on and I did a PhD and I was going to be an academic and I was never, ever, ever going to work in the big, bad, dirty mining industry. And I could go through every single one. There's been marriage breakdowns, there's been an unexpected child, there's been breast cancer, there's been a really shitty boss, there's been a whole spectrum of reasons why I have left a job or, moved on or made a choice around what I was doing professionally. So just you don't know what life's going to throw at you, but just, say yes to things. Don't be afraid. Like it is, and like Steph said, giving your anxiety a name. We all have some form of anxiety. We might not be diagnosed, but we all feel anxious occasionally about things. My daughter has anxiety. Her anxiety monster is called Sophie. She doesn't use that anymore, but when she was little, it was Sophie. So, and the pivotal moment for me, I don't know, was there one? I'm not sure.
Probably many, I reckon.
Pardon?
Many. There's probably many.
Yeah, many. And I've reinvented myself several times. I think one of the things, not so much when I was younger, I was kind of thought I was pursuing things and then would change direction because of whatever was going on in my life. But was always just crippled with this lack of self-confidence and doubting myself. And to be honest, I don't think I really got rid of that until I hit my mid-40s. And I'm turning 50 in a couple of weeks' time. So that's one of the things I think that in terms of choices, you've just got to turn those voices down. You've got to not get it. You can't help but listen to them, but you've also got to then just, I don't know, grab something inside yourself and go, I'm doing this no matter how scared I am. And just do it. Be brave. Be brave and say yes would be, I think, the choices where it's made a difference to me.
I think that's really great advice. I can see everybody nodding along as well. I mean, what's the worst that can happen? You might find out that you
Yeah.
don't want to do that, or it's something, but you've still learned and you've grown, and that will take you to wherever the next place
And
is.
if you try something and it doesn't work, well, do it for a year or two, get the experience, because no experience is wasted either. All experience is valuable, but then leave and do something else. Not every job has to be the job that you stay in for the rest of your life. And in fact, if you're like the rest of us, it won't be. So don't be afraid to move on. Don't be afraid to leap for an opportunity. Don't be afraid to leave an opportunity either.
Yeah, so true. And for, I guess, all of you now, you've reached the points in your career where you've all got these amazing roles. So I'd really like to take some time just to unpack a little bit more what it is that each of you do and how you get the strength to do that and how you go about approaching these big challenges, I suppose, that you're all trying to face. So maybe, Steph, if I could maybe start with you. So the role that you're doing at the moment, you work right the way across decarbonisation and strategy and implementation. But how do you take this big goal, this big ambition, and turn it into practical outcomes? How do you go about doing that?
I mean, there's a couple of ways. Follow the logic and you'll be fine. Now speaking about that out loud, I'm like, man, I was probably really obnoxious as a junior. But that's okay. So I think like one of the things is that we are a really data-driven environment, but we're also a sector made up of people. And so like when we're looking for a decarb opportunity or whatnot, you've got to be able to, work with people, you've got to be able to work with data, you've got to be able to work, across all of those different things and operations. And I think this is kind of where I was saying before, you've got to understand what reality you're grounded in, because what I'm essentially asking for is for people to change the way that they operate, or to be able to add in an additional process, or either way, it's people don't like it straight away unless they're told they have to. So I'm really popular on site. But I mean, one of the things there is that we actually go through a really long process. It can start either with, how do we help an organization respond to compliance? So, we have a safeguard mechanism now. We've got ways of reporting our data through Angers. There's all of these different things that can be a bit tricky for organizations to navigate, how to use those mechanisms. So I can help with that. We also help with, how do you develop your strategy? And then from there, it flows on, okay, if you've got these operations and these are your emissions profiles, well, let's drill down. Is it the trucks? Is it your gas? Is it, your processing? Where are the emissions? And then this is where you need people, because the people on the site know exactly everything, every detail about their operation. And I'm not going to go in there and tell them how to suck eggs. And so it's about, working with the people on the ground and actually understanding the operational realities that they see. Because I could be like, you know what, battery electric trucks are the best thing ever. Let's go for gold. Everyone have them. It's going to be awesome. And then you'll have, this mine over here says actually all one, you can't get them for a long time because they're not commercially available. But let's say they're commercially available tomorrow. And you say, do you know what, it actually doesn't work with our mine design, but this other option would be really cool. Or, there's a solution to everything, but you've got to be able to listen enough to actually find that. And then, as far as finding the actual projects, with the help, then we put some numbers around them, and put everything into, and this is, I guess, it's like one bite at a time is how we eat the elephant. You've got to put everything into a dollar value, right? Because we work in an industry that has large economic, everything, importance, impact, everything. And so, prioritizing projects based on, a number of different criteria, including, the cost of it, ease of implementation, does it actually work with this site? Will the regulator be okay with it? That's one of the things as well, is that you might come up with the coolest decarb plan in the world, but your regulator, environmental regulator, safety regulator, whatever, might say, do you know what, I'm not cool with that. And you may not actually be able to go through that until, you take someone on a journey. And so I think, one of the things is it's actually been like it's a really slow process. A lot of it has been like, I jumped into it thinking, all right, let's go. Everyone's going to be really excited about reducing emissions. I've been working in this space for 15 years, and I think like only like this year, people have been like, yeah, let's go. And most of it has been at the back end of this year. So a lot of the time it's like herding cats. It's trying to convince people that this is something, worthwhile. It's a risk to be managed. Then how do you quantify that risk when it's quite dynamic? So a lot of my role is actually influencing, whether it's organizations, whether it's policy, whether it's industry bodies, of how to actually get there where it's a good outcome for everyone. So I think, yeah, how do we do decarb projects? Very slowly. But the thing is that you don't want to jump into them with 2 feet, because like they have very real implication on the way that we operate. You wouldn't do something to you take a hospital or something and you're like, do you know what'd be really cool is if we changed all of the lights to these new cool lights. And we haven't got a lot of examples around the world of these lights, but I know that they're really awesome. And like, what's the worst that can happen? You're like, well, the whole hospital goes bloody dark. Like you have big implications here. Miners have shareholders, they have communities. There's a lot of safety involved as well. So no project can go through without a full integration into a site's safety and health management system. And so I started in climate policy and compliance, and now I'm running projects, looking at how do we integrate into sites SHMS? How do I get the site GM or SSE across the line, because they essentially have to take the responsibility from a legislative perspective if something goes wrong. So it's one of these things where you don't actually understand what you're fully going into. It's far more complex than just whacking a few solar panels into the ground, but doing it slowly and with a lot of buy-in with the stakeholders, you actually end up with like a more sustainable outcome. Not sustainable in terms of like, oh, green sky, yeah, let's go, blue sky, green trees. It's more that sustainable from a business perspective, like it will stick if you do it properly. And that's what we want. We want people to actually change the way that they're operating. And so, yeah, it's slowly and delicately.
Yeah, that's it. It's so interesting to hear all the ins and outs and how big it is really. But the fact that you're making progress and you're getting buy-in is really a positive. So hopefully that will continue. And Helen, your role as well, you're kind of at that interface with exploration and technical leadership, and you kind of the decisions that you're making are also kind of shaping this entire like mining cycle. How do you navigate all the trade-offs? We've heard that like from Steph, there are so many competing priorities on a site. How do you do that while still continuing the momentum and going forward?
I guess that's where when I'm talking to whether it's mining companies about managing their mine waste, or I'm talking to exploration companies about exploration stuff, I'm coming from a position of knowledge and authority. And I didn't get that by showing up today with no experience and fresh out of uni. So I needed to do that groundwork first. I needed to earn respect, get experience, and understand how everything works if I want to then have a hope much later on, like now, of influencing that or impacting how that is carried out or the outcomes for a particular operation. So yeah, don't think that you know everything, because you don't. and just do not undervalue any experience, because it is all valuable and it's all going to teach you something, whether it's how, speaking from my end of things, whether it's how exploration works, or if you're a processing engineer, chemical engineer, or a mining engineer, or a rehabilitation expert, how those things actually work in practical scenarios, how different operations operate in a wet season versus a dry season, in 45-degree, 50-degree heat versus, in the cold. How important mental health is on a site, like all of these things, because a site, it might be made up of technical aspects and operational aspects, but then as Steph said, it's also made up of people. Our entire industry is made up of people. So to be able to bring technical leadership or influence decision-making processes on a site or as part of an operation or part of a company, you need to understand intimately how everything works and what the challenges are that they are facing. But then also who the people are that you're dealing with, and what's important to them and what is going to shift the dial for them so that you can bring them along. And if that's, technical detail and logic, okay, that's where you go. If it's big picture outcomes and global strategy, well, okay, then you take that, it's going to be different if it's surviving the next wet season without shutdowns again. It's all about understanding what's important for both the people and the site and the company, and then pitching what's important, but coming from a position of authority because you've done the hard yards, you've sweated alongside those people or other people, in teams, understanding how it all works. Go for fly in, fly out, because or live on site, but don't say, oh, I don't want to do that. I'm only going to work in an office, because you will lose the respect of everybody that you're trying to influence, and you will never fully understand the problems that you're trying to solve.
And it's fun.
Yeah. And the food isn't too bad either.
Yeah, I absolutely loved, before I had a child, I absolutely loved fly in, fly out. It's fantastic. A 2-day weekend is just, it's not enough.
And somebody else does all your cooking for you. You can go and do your 12-hour shift and come back and there's a mess hall waiting for you.
And you develop so much camaraderie, with the people that you're working with, and it's really actually pretty cool.
I think that's really good advice. Make sure you've got that foundation as well. And what you were saying earlier, that you've had some chapters in your career, but this is like you're pulling the book together now and you're drawing on those chapters as and when you need them to really be able to impact and make influence.
Definitely.
And so, Naomi, in CSIRO, you obviously have a big multidisciplinary team there that you can draw on lots of different people, and you kind of work right at the intersection of the resources sector, sustainability, and community benefit. And you work on things like the circular economy. How do you think like multidisciplinary thinking is going to impact innovation in that area? And how do you think it might be meaningful here, especially here in Australia?
Yeah, and I think what Steph was saying about the buy-in across all of your stakeholder groups and across all of the different scales that you're talking about, that's actually like critical to even success of research and innovation in any sector, right? So yeah, shameless plug, we have a paper now that sort of articulates that stakeholder engagement framework to promote community buy-in, promote stakeholder buy-in, so that you get shared benefits and you have that sustainability both at the business level but also in the sector. So that was quite fun. I'm not a social scientist, but that's a social scientist piece of evidentiary based literature that supports exactly what Steph is saying, right? So critical to anything that we do now at CSIRO. And I guess for me, the biggest change came from acknowledging that what we were doing in the lab is not the scale that we need to consider, right? So exactly like what Helen is saying, get out, go and see the site, go and see the scale that you're looking at, and the challenges at the scales that are actually there, right? And who is working there, what kinds of communities are surrounding you, what kinds of environments are surrounding you. I have never done fly in, fly out, though I would have loved it, I think. But I absolutely love every opportunity to get out on site because it's just enormous. Like the scale of the operation is sensational. I just loved it. And you know, one of the best memories I've got is standing on Escondida in Chile's bioleaching heap, and it's like just bigger than I've ever considered any kind of microbial scale process at. So understanding the scales of what we're dealing with is pretty critical to anything in mining and energy and resource extraction, for sure. And then alongside that is understanding the impact that it is having, I guess, on our environment and our society in Australia. It's a very specific set of circumstances. Sure, it's mirrored in some of the other countries that have got very similar economic structures. But also understanding that protecting our environment and being more sustainable in that industry will benefit both the economy and also our nature, right? So we can't have one without the other. And it's not a competition. It is also something that we sort of focus on at CSIRO. Like circular economy itself is, again, like I said, very aspirational. And, you know, at its core, mining is really against principle one, which is like, don't extract anything from the earth without putting stuff back, right? So it's really against some of the core principles of circular economy, but you can bring in the principles of circular economy and other aspects across the value chains that you're working within. And so, yeah, the scale, and also, yeah, the slow moving timelines, and also the herding cat analogies got me, because I was like, at CSIRO, you've got a couple of different roles that you play, particularly at my level now. So where you've been like the go-to research expert within the organization, you've got global facing expertise, but then suddenly you're sort of drawn back into the organization to start managing the people. And the people are often, it is very much like herding cats within this organization. We're all scientists, so I would argue we're all a little bit on the ND scale at some point. And so understanding what they require out of their research and how best to support them, as well as deliver research that's both impactful and innovative to our industry partners at the scale that they need. Those are sometimes competing objectives within this organisation. So, yeah, it's an interesting time for me in this position, but I'll probably learn a bit more over the next few years, I think, in terms of managing the people and the strategy side of things and how that might impact our projects. But I did want to say that, like, I've got quite a recent memory of being an early career research scientist or an early career person. So, like, in those early days, finding your mentors is really critical to, I guess, garnering the advice that you need, having a sounding board to make sure that you're doing the right things in terms of, I don't know, internal organizational training and development, whatever that looks like in your organization. And then also having their ear open to opportunities that might be beneficial to you. And again, like what Helen said, moving around to every single different department and having a look to see what they're doing and how it might all connect together is crucial, I think. And also crucial as an individual in terms of learning and developing in your career very early on. You have that flexibility early on. You don't have that, you are the boss, you have to do the boss stuff. You've got the flexibility to get around and have a look and see and learn a whole bunch of different things.
Yeah, absolutely. And having a mentor and having that network around you is so vital when it comes to growing your career. And I will do a shameless plug here for WISER. So WISER is Women in Sustainable Energy and Resources. So if you are starting out in this sector and you haven't yet formed your network of people all working in the sector, I highly recommend you go and check out the WISER website, because they do run some phenomenal networking events. And it's a great chance for you to meet other women working right the way across the sector. We still are in the minority across the sector, of course, and these networking events are some of the friendliest ones I've ever been to. You can't attend them without meeting 3 or 4 different people, and that's how you're going to really grow and see yourself in the future in the sector. I know from speaking to other people, that's how many people find their jobs within the network. I mean, I don't know for our panelists, how has your network helped you grow during your career?
Oh, I think like finding those mentors is really important, like Naomi said, but also I would I was thinking when you were speaking about that, like, don't be afraid to move on from your mentor if they're not doing it for you. But like one of the key things is I've always been in really like it wasn't until maybe my 10th year of my career where I actually had another female in my team. And so I was always working with men. So my mentors were men. And then only recently I've found a female mentor, and I'm like, man, you get it. And so I would definitely encourage people to have, and you may have a mentor within your organization that's like a technical mentor or something, but like a career mentor, go and find another woman, because there's a lot that goes along with being female in a male dominated industry that men just don't get. But like networks are fantastic. I think networks have they haven't helped me get jobs per se. They've helped me like influence the different outcomes that I want. Like we've definitely, like I know Helen and I've spoken about like, oh, wouldn't this person be great in that role or whatnot, like when things pop up or somebody might leave an organization. But for me, like it hasn't helped me get a job. It's more like, oh, I know this person, I'm going to try and get, that information, or I know that person will try and, influence that. So it's more about how, like, particularly in the decarb space, how we can herd the policy cats to make it a more smooth transition of decarb, because right now there's a lot of barriers, and they're not necessarily intentional barriers, but they're still there. So networks are super handy for that.
It can just be as much as being able to find the contact details for the right person, because often organizations are so big that it's not knowing who to talk to. So having that in and that person who can, if they're not the right person, chances are they might know the right person who is, or the person who knows the right person. So you can really use that. Up on the screen, I have just put a link to the Wiser website, also to the Women in Mets LinkedIn page. So please do follow those and join along. Helen, did you have something to add as well?
I was just going to say, Steph had brought up networks, which I absolutely agree with. But I will say, I think I've only ever gotten one job that wasn't through my network. So most of the roles that I've had have been through people I know, even from straight out of uni. So your network is key. And it's the people that make up our industry. And I think as well, I've been a mentor as part of mentoring programs, but I've never actually been a mentee. But I think I've had a lot of mentors. I've been a mentee to mentors, but not through a formal program. So there's a lot of people that I would turn to for advice. And I agree that men don't necessarily understand the challenges that women face, but I've also got a lot of male champions who I know have my back as well. So I wouldn't undervalue their contribution even a little bit.
That's really important as well. I think having the right mentor that really connects with you as well is really important going forward. So for each of you, we are almost out of time. So I do want to open this up to see if anybody had any questions. So I just wanted to say to the people on the call, if you have a question, you can either type it into the Q&A that we have there, or you can raise your hand and we'll invite you to unmute and you can ask the panel the question. Did we have any questions?
Be brave.
While people are typing their questions, why don't you ask us another one?
Yeah, so I do have actually another question for you, which is if you could go back to the very beginning of your careers, what is the one bit of advice you would say to yourself? So maybe Naomi, do you want to go first? What would you say?
I think mine is pretty specific to the time of my life I was in. I'd just come back from maternity leave, twins from a full-time role, returning to a 0.6 FTE. So that's like part-time for anybody who doesn't care about FTEs. But absolutely in a science-facing role, had this anxiety about presenting myself, even in the leave period, as if I'd never gone anywhere, right? So then tried to come back to my job in exactly the same capacity that I'd left, despite the fact that I'd had a time reduction and also a huge major life change, right? And so I guess my advice to anybody, regardless of the time of life that you're in, is just to consider your circumstances and what you're actually realistically capable of doing. And just be careful about overcommitting. I think women, generally speaking, find it difficult to say no to things, especially in the early parts of your career where you're trying to develop as quickly as possible and, you know, learn as much as you can and meet as many people as you can. And it's very easy to overcommit. And those sorts of behaviors are become entrained. And then when it becomes impossible to manage your work and your life, it will inevitably blow up in your face, which is what happened to me. So yeah, just to be cautious and you know, aware of that work-life balance early on before things become, you know, a bit more critical, really.
So important. And burnout is a real thing. It happens, and it happens more frequently for women, especially women in technical and science backgrounds. So it really is important to protect yourself from that and have that in the back of your mind all the time. What about yourself, Steph? What would you say?
I would have told myself to calm down. I was so eager to like do everything and do it now, and like why wasn't I, you know, climbing the chain and all of that? And like Helen said, I had to learn the stuff. I had to go through, and I just had to calm down and do the job. And things don't happen overnight. You've got to go through the motions, because that's where we learn the most.
Absolutely. And Helen, yourself?
The thing that I tell all young people who ask me for career advice is, again, all of my career choices have been for very personal reasons, and my success, I feel, you know, is largely accidental, but my network is the thing. Start in first year, start in high school, you know. Start as soon as you can. Do not be the person. Go to functions, go to events, there's always, you know, AusIMM, AusMine, AIG, I don't know, all the different organizations. Go to all those things and don't stand in the corner. Speak to somebody you don't know. You know, introduce yourself to the speaker at that event. Because that person is not going, oh my God, I do not want to meet, so, you know, oh, another student. They're not, you know, they are pleased that you were brave enough to come and say hello to them and introduce yourself. So grow that network, be really purposeful about that, because the rest of your career will derail itself, you know, and life will have its way with you. But your network is something that you can control. So do that.
I think that really goes to answer Nishani's Q&A, right? Those are the skills.
The
not
Nishani's in the Q&A. Yeah.
Just for anyone who hasn't seen it, Nishani's question is just about she's a PhD student and she's feeling really inspired, firstly, so that's really great. Thanks to our panelists for that. But she wants to know what skills she should be really building on during her PhD so that she can join the sector afterwards.
My answer to that is communication.
Yep.
You can be the smartest, nerdiest, most brilliant technical person in the world. If you can't communicate what you're doing and you can't get your message across, it is such an underrated skill. So practice communication.
Particularly to lots of different audiences.
Yes.
Like if you can only talk to, if you're an engineer and you can only talk to other engineers, then you will just stay an engineer, and you are capped at what you can do. But if you can communicate anything to anyone and to be able to, you know, get your importance across there, then you don't have a cap. You will be your own cap.
Yeah. You don't have a ceiling. Yeah.
And I will say that as a PhD student or a student otherwise, a lot of those networking events that you've mentioned are usually free or subsidized. So make the most of them, because after you finish being a student, they're not free and subsidized anymore. You have to pay for them and find a way to pay for them.
So true.
Communication has really been critical across the board for me. Like, I could be nerdy and scientific and talk to you until the cows come home about bioleaching. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter unless you can context set and make the message meaningful for who you're delivering it to. And it doesn't necessarily mean anything until you do put the engineer versus, the community member in the room together, and you start to realize just how technically different those people are and how different your language should be. And their drivers are also individual, which again is around that stakeholder engagement and knowing who you're talking to, why, and why it matters for them. Those have been very critical learnings for me across the board in science.
And just the fact, Nishani, that you're here today and you're participating in this webinar and that you're listening and you're showing an interest, I think that also goes a really long way to joining the sector. So well done for you for being here and for everybody. And especially today, I want to thank our panelists. Thank you so much for all of your insights and for sharing so openly with us today. I think we'll all echo Nishani's points by saying it's been a really impactful and inspiring conversation. Thank you all for your time, and thank you to everybody who's joined us and taken part today. I hope you all have a wonderful the rest of your week. We are about on time. So thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Claire. Thanks for
Thank
having
you.
Thanks for having us.